Good morning or afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another tropical update here by Adrian's Weather Forecast. And we have a lot to talk about in this video. So this video may be rather extensive, so I do apologize for that in advance. But just look at all of the activity we have in the Atlantic right now. It sure looks like it is the peak season here. September 12th is basically, I believe, like 3 days after the actual peak day. But we're still in the peak season, so it definitely looks like we have four AOIs with having a medium, and now we have Tropical Storm Nicholas, which just formed not too long ago. It actually skipped tropical depression status. There was going to be a small chance that it would have became a potential tropical cyclone, so it's going to be affecting the land within 48 hours. But recon went in and they found winds sustained of tropical storms at the surface. So it's now sitting here at 40 miles an hour, 1,008 millibars, and moving north-northwest at the 13 miles an hour. Likely to skim the coast of Mexico, make landfall in Texas as a rather moderate tropical storm. There is a decent chance it could possibly become a brief and weak Category 1 75-mile-an-hour storm. In my opinion, with the National Hurricane Center being slightly conservative at 65. As well, the AOI here, I think this will become an invest rather soon once it actually gets over water. I think it's going to immediately become an invest when it gets over water. It's just 60% now. So went from a 0.20, I think, to a 10.60 one day. And I did tell you guys that this percent will dramatically increase. I literally said that. And there we go. Another tropical wave is forecasted to move off the west coast of Africa in a couple of days. Gradual development of the system is possible. Thereafter, a tropical depression could form by the middle of the week here. Again, like I said, this could very well become a big storm here. I wouldn't doubt if it becomes a Larry 2.0, a strong major hurricane in a strong or not major hurricane, sorry, but a strong hurricane in the MDR. I guess is what I want to say. I mean, I actually have confidence that this could very well form into a hurricane as early as this area. I mean, that's something we haven't really seen since 2017. Obviously, Larry became a hurricane like over here, but I think this could honestly become a hurricane as early as like over here. And that may be slightly overreactive, but I just have so much confidence in this little wave right here. The conditions are just super conducive, so keeping a very close eye on this one. As well, that AOI over there near the Bahamas surprisingly increased to a 50% chance. Worth to watch out for maybe a slight threat for the southeast United States here. But in my opinion, I think this will most likely go out to sea and most likely just skin maybe the U.S. coast and maybe like an Edward or maybe like a Dolly like we saw last year where it kind of just goes like that basically. So I'm gonna have to keep a close eye on this as well. But this is definitely not really on my main look or my main concern, I guess. The first concern is Nicholas. And then the second concern is really the MDR invest right here, or not invest, but AOI. And then we have obviously 93L decrease to 2020. This one, like I just said, is most likely not going to form. And then we have a new one right here. This is a surprising one. Really weird invest that I don't think we're not invest, sorry, but AOI, area of interest, just into the far northeast Atlantic here. Basically north of Morocco and near Spain. Or near Portugal and Spain. So this one's going to be very interesting here. I don't really haven't seen anything on mall supporting anything like that. Not even symbols are on that. So I don't think this will be anything too crazy. So let's now get a look here. The key message here for Tropical Storm Nicholas. So tropical storm conditions are expected along portions of the northeast coast of Mexico and the coast of South Texas beginning on Monday. Nicholas is forecasted to approach the middle Texas coast as a strong tropical storm on Tuesday, and tropical storm conditions are possible along portions of the middle and upper Texas coast late Monday night into Tuesday. So watching out for early this week here. So basically, as we start seeing conditions that as early as tomorrow. There's a possibility of life-threatening storm surge along the coast of Texas from the mouth of Rio Grande to High Island. Residents in these areas should follow any advice given by local officials. So there is, according to the National Hurricane Center, a life-threatening storm surge, but as of now, the only forecasted storm surge is 2 to 4 feet, which is still rather decent amount here. But again, I think this could very well become a slight hurricane. So I wouldn't doubt if these totals go slightly higher to maybe 3 to 5 feet to maybe even just maybe 35 feet is what I'm predicting here. Periods of heavy rainfall are expected to impact portions of the Texas and Louisiana coast through the middle of the week here. So again, I'm going to continue to move inland threats. Let's now get a look at the actual discussion and get to the overall peak forecast. So again, there's a peak forecast of 65 miles an hour for the next 48 hours. I honestly think this could very well get to 70 to maybe 75 miles an hour at its peak here. I mean, conditions are pretty overall. They're pretty overall good. I mean, we're not seeing too much to really worry about, so this is going to definitely be very interesting. So here's a look at visible here at the Bay of Campeche. You can clearly see this looks a lot better than compared to yesterday. There's the actual low pressure itself. It's a little bit more lopsided. We're seeing a lot of that convection initiation staying to the northeast of the actual low pressure. As well, we are seeing a good amount of lightning here just outside of the center itself. But we are starting to see a decent amount of westerlies produce a decent amount of convection developing on the southwestern quadrant. But right now, the system's pretty lopsided due to the ridge here bringing some shear just within this vicinity. So it's kind of preventing a little bit of initiation and overall this wind field stretching further westward. So a lot of these tropical storm winds are staying to the east. But here's a look at the overall visible. Again, decent amount of convection. You can kind of see these really cold and towering cloud tops, as well as some spreading out cirrus clouds with some decent outflow channel to the north. As well as we have a developing outflow channel just to the east of the low pressure itself. But the storm's not looking too shabby at all. Let's look at the IR forecast. You can see a good amount of convection here where the actual center itself is. Seeing cloud tops that are around 80 degrees Celsius. So we are definitely seeing some of that cold core right there as well. Some widespread convection stretching to the northeast, but like I did say, it's very, very lopsided. We're not seeing much really going on to the west of the actual low pressure itself, but that most likely will change as that ridge pushes northward and the shear decreases dramatically. So here's a look here, the first advisory on tropics from Nicholas. Like I did say, a lot of those winds are very just really spread just specifically and only in the eastern quadrant. So there is actually seen a decent wind field. You can see the little yellow circle or orange circle. That's where you have those tropical storm winds on the surface. And then, of course, with the ridge likely to spare Mexico and make landfall near Corpus Christi, Texas, in the middle coast right there. We do have tropical storm warnings where we had the Hurricane Hannah landfall last year. We do have those warnings all the way from Brownsville, Texas, to portions of the Rio Grande bordering Mexico and Texas. So we do have tropical storm warnings over there. And now tropical storm watches go as far northeast as the Houston and Galveston area, and like to, again, to make landfall as maybe around 60 to 5 minor system. But again, with that ridge, and allow for more water time. So that's why I'm not looking at the possibility for seeing a hurricane, or at least a brief, very brief hurricane there. It weakens into tropical depression over Houston, and becomes a post-tropical depression very quickly as it really starts to move extremely slowly inland. So it's going to be post-tropical by the time it gets towards Tyler, Texas. Again, although it's going to become post-tropical quickly, we'll certainly really watching out for some widespread inland effects. So the arrival of the actual wind itself here, so we're going to start seeing arrival, maybe gusts as early as Monday, maybe around noon, but maybe going to be seeing those actual wind itself by around maybe Monday 8 p.m. So tomorrow night we may start seeing those tropical storm winds. We do actually have as high as already as a of course 90 to 100% chance for the actual area, again specifically centered across the eastern quadrant. It's actually really interesting here. You can kind of see there's so little initiation going on the western quadrant to the actual areas just west of the actual storm itself are within a 20 to 30%, but areas to the east are at a 90 to 100% chance. And then, of course, you can kind of just see a lot of that is just going to be staying on the eastern quadrant. But like I just say, it's going to get a little bit better once it actually gets towards the Texas coast. It's become a little bit more symmetrical slightly. But right now, it's kind of more elongated and very, very lopsided. So it's not the best looking storm, but you can kind of just see the overall track. It's going to get a little bit more symmetrical with the wind field as it goes closer to Texas. So that's going to allow for some overall bigger effects. And that's what I'm going to be really watching out to already as a 20 to 30% as far inland as areas near Tyler and Texarkana, or not Texarkana, sorry, as far north as Tyler. And then we do have a 5 to 10% going all the way up into areas near Texarkana. So the overall peak storm surge forecast, so all the way from the mouth of Rio Grande all the way up to High Island, which is basically, of course, north of Galveston. We do have a 2 to 4 foot storm surge forecast, but I would not doubt if we have a larger number over here within the areas of San Antonio Bay, Corpus Christi, and overall the mouth of the Rio Grande. I would not doubt if we do get a higher storm surge forecast later on. So here's a look here at the next 3 days forecast on the on the flooding threat from the Weather Prediction Center. We have a very widespread slight, which is a 10% all the way from areas near Brownsville, Texas, to areas near Lake Charles and Morgan City, Louisiana. So here's day one, slight risk for Houston and areas near Lake Charles. And then by day two, which is going to be Tuesday morning, a very widespread threat. And then by day three, this threat for flooding goes a little bit further inland into areas near Shreveport, getting close to Waco. And then just overall see a decent flooding threat, but it's not going to be significantly crazy. The only big producer will because it's going to be moving far. It's going to be moving far inland quite slowly. So here's a look here at the overall 1 to 5 day actual precipitation accumulation forecast. So we're going to be seeing a widespread amount of 6 to 10 inches, with even seeing significant flooding for areas of Louisiana there, 10 to 15 inches. So we're probably going to be seeing the worst of the actual flooding staying just off the coast. Thankfully, for it being rather elongated and rather lopsided. So again, Texas could get a lot worse with this system, with higher storm surge, more rain totals, and overall we could have seen tropical storm warnings going all the way up near Houston. But since it's so lopsided, a lot of that worst will stay just off the coast. But watching out for Brownsville to get 2 to 4 inches, with the worst flooding being further northward, because it will obviously become more symmetrical as it goes northward. Let's now get a look at what the NAM 3 kilometer wants to have. So they want to have rain from the get into actually portions of the actual eastern coast of Texas as early as the next 12 hours. So we're going to start seeing those far outer bands, or a little along the front here, some scattered showers moving into areas near Corpus Christi. And then the main system obviously will start to bring some really heavy rain within the next 24 hours or so by tomorrow evening. So we're going to see some overall heavy scattered showers from the actual outer bands of Nicholas. And obviously the main part of this will obviously be on the eastern quadrant. So a lot of that flooding will just stay basically off the coast here. But as it becomes more symmetrical, it's going to allow for some more rain, and actually more significant rain totals across northeastern Texas. And now obviously going to see some widespread rain now into Lake Charles. Maybe even see some more rain there even near Morgan City in New Orleans. But that's overall what we have so far for Nicholas. So here's a look at Invest 93L. There's really not much to say except this storm looks like, or this Invest looks like absolute trash. Like, low pressure, believe it or not, is basically like right here. I mean, it's just dissipating quickly, and there's really not much to really talk about. This is not going to be anything. Here's now a look at the overall track guidance. Again, we do actually have a forecasted more agreement. It's going to probably maybe either go westward or a little bit slightly southwestward. But either way, this storm's not going to be anything crazy. I mean, even the pressure forecast has actually increased compared to yesterday now. Really minimal center pressure, actually getting to 1,010 millibars, and they don't have anything happening whatsoever. So Invest 93L is definitely not anything interesting. Let's now go ahead and go look at the overall conditions in the Atlantic. So obviously, really warm waters ahead of Tropical Storm Nicholas. And that's going to be a big factor to why I think this could very well become a brief hurricane. Again, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's definitely a possibility. So we're going to be seeing some really warm waters actually ahead of Nicholas. So actually, since it's going this way with the ridge, it's actually going to be going into like the warmest waters instead of it going this way or that way. So it's actually going to be going into the warmest waters because of that ridge steering. And that's going to be a big factor to whether it can possibly become stronger than 65 miles an hour. And it's a pretty big pocket of 31 degrees Celsius. And although it's moving quite quickly, at least decently, at a decent pace, it's definitely a possibility. The conditions are definitely favorable as well for that AOI with 60% off Africa. Really good conditions off the off the waters and deep into the MDR, getting waters of nearly 30 degrees Celsius. And of course, that AOI near the Bahamas has like the best waters actually, with 33 degrees Celsius basically near the Bahamas. And if it does follow the Gulf Stream, it could definitely become something interesting. However, I wouldn't really highlight the whole United States or concern for a landfall, like maybe a Bertha landfall like last year, or a Arthur type system where it just skins the coast and does not make a landfall. I wouldn't worry about that just yet, but it's definitely a possibility. We could see maybe a brief tropical storm just skinning the southeast United States, but I think that AOI in the Bahamas will most likely become an out to sea storm. But here's now the video for overall ocean heat content. So again, rather a decent amount of ocean heat content ahead of Tropical Storm Nicholas, especially. I mean, this is going to be going to like the best conditions actually, especially if it does like this. It's going to go into a decent pocket of over 110 basically meters of 80-degree Fahrenheit waters, as well. A decent pocket right here of nearly 130 meters of 80-degree Fahrenheit water. So overall, decent, really good conditions actually water-wise for ahead of Nicholas. So the GFS 18Z just came out here. So let's see what they have. So they actually have, within the next 24 hours, Nicholas being at 997 millibars. Of course, nothing whatsoever in the MDR with a 93L. And there you see, there comes the AOI off Africa right there. That's going to be very interesting. See, decent amount of spin. There's a trough axis right there within the tropical wave. But 991 millibar landfall actually gets as low as 990 according to the GFS, just skating the coast and making landfall actually further northward into areas near Galveston and North Island there. So that's going to be very interesting. Again, pretty far inland flooding. There, the GFS has the AOI for the Bahamas getting to as low as 1,011 millibars. It could definitely become a brief system, maybe a depression, or but like I said, it's not gonna be anything too crazy. And then the GFS kind of does not have too much either within that 60% invest just yet. Let's not get a look here at the CMC though. The CMC, let's see if they're picking up, and they're finally picking up on Nicholas, but only having it at 1,005 millibars, which is basically what it's about to be very soon. And they also have nothing on the invest off near, or not the invest, sorry, but the AOI off the Bahamas. But they do have something for the 60%. Obviously, just about to come off Africa at 1,000 millibars by September 21st. You're actually, no, that's not even the, yeah, that's the storm right there. They see, but it just goes north of the Caribbean, or the actual Greater and Lesser Antilles. But that's going to be very, very interesting. And let's see what the European wants to show. So obviously they have a rather good storm ahead for the Brownsville area, but they actually have a pretty rather south landfall. And the Europeans still being very consistent with a monster storm from that 60%, but just staying north of Puerto Rico and the Lesser Antilles because of that ridging steering. Let's now go look at the actual ridging steering here for Nicholas and what the setup is. So there's the actual ridge itself. There it is right there. So, like I just said, there's going to be a slight amount here, kind of preventing an initiation in the upper levels for Nicholas on the western quadrants. But there's a decent upper level anticyclone with, there's the outflow channel right there, and a slight weaker outflow channel developing on the eastern quadrant. As you go further on, though, we're going to be seeing overall better condition itself, a lot less shear on both sides. So that's going to allow for a little bit more initiation on the western quadrant, and then a more profound outflow channels. Well, maybe only 2 outflow channels though, but overall this steering, obviously as this ridge really pushes northward, is going to allow for the possibility for this storm to not make landfall in Mexico, make landfall in middle or North Texas.